Now for something a bit different, here we have Source of the Nile. Not a war game, an exploration game, an adventure game, a semi-role-playing game, whatever you want to call it. Check out this seriously sweet-looking box. It's probably the real reason I got the game. It definitely is the reason I picked up the game. But also because, you know, it was recommended to me by someone who saw that I like to play solitaire, and this is, from what it seems, definitely one of those games that's solitaire friendly. It's designed for 1 to 6 players, first of all. And in the rule book it states that it was designed to be an educational adventure in which the players compete primarily with the environment and only incidentally with each other. A player takes the role of a newspaper publisher or scientific society who sponsors an explorer to enter Africa and discover new lands. So you're not, as the player, actually an explorer. You are just one of those people who sponsors and sends them out. And that's, I think, because, you know, you could, if you're playing the campaign game where you're trying to explore every hex of the map, your explorer might not survive, and then you can choose a different one and continue where you left off. But otherwise, you're very much there, right there with them as they explore the continent. There's also another, the regular version of the game, Game 1, which is not that campaign game, but rather just more of a structured game where you pick a certain number of turns and you play through the game, and whoever has the most victory points at the end wins. But there's no fighting with each other, from what I can tell, and there's no direct interaction. I also wanted to mention that this version here is the second edition of the game, published by Avalon Hill in 1979. The original came out a year or two before that. It was published by Discovery Games. And they also had an expansion available called Tributary that I think is only compatible with the original version, because there have been a few changes made before Avalon Hill republished it, including a lot more cards in the event deck. There's 108 cards in this deck. The cards themselves look different. There's a lot more information on them. We'll take a look at these as we play the game. Also forgot to mention, the game itself is designed by a couple of guys named Ross Maker and Dave Wesley. So with that, let's take a look at the map. It's the southern 2/3 of the continent, and you can see it's mainly blank, with a few exceptions along the coastline. We have a whole lot of tables that we will be rolling on, and up here is the terrain key. We're going to zoom in on that. I'm stuck to a tripod, so it's going to be at an angle, but at least it won't be shaky. So you can see that there are little symbols for veldt, lake, mountain, desert, swamp, jungle, jungle/mountain, jungle/swamp terrain. Little symbols that you can use to denote the river source, cataract, impassable cataract, oases, a bullseye looking thing for port, mouth of a river, and a number printed at the mouth of rivers indicating the minimum length for that river. So there are certain terrain that are pre-printed on the map. The map itself is a representation of where the map of Africa stood at around the year 1814. Over the course of the next 100 years, the rest, all of these white hexes, would be mapped and charted. Over here we have a sequence of play. Let's take a look at that. I feel so strange using this huge tripod. Alright. So basically you would select an activity level for your expedition, how fast you want to be moving. Then you draw a card from that deck that I showed you. Then you actually move your expedition and that's actually a bulk of your turn. Dealing with that, you would draw an event card for determining terrain, you draw another event card to determine the course of a river, and you draw yet another one to determine if a native tribe resides in the hex that you're exploring, and so on and so forth, determining the alliances of the tribe, and if you're hunting, you would consult the hunting table, then you draw another event card and determine if you received any bonuses. And we have plexiglass, because we're not going to be drawing on it with crayon. I'm going to try out these dry erase markers and see how that works out. We also got this game log, where we'll be filling out information regarding our expedition, the expedition makeup, the number of bearers, guides, askaris, and whether we are, a foot, mounted, or canoe expedition, and various assets that we carry with us, rations, gifts, muskets, bonus items, and the portage cost of each of those items, as well as the transport capability of each of the members of our expedition. And then we keep track of that, making sure that we're not going over our limits. And down below we have a place for each of our caches. Don't really know what that's about yet, but I think that you're able to kind of stow stuff away on your route. Then you have places to keep track of various tribes that you encounter and discoveries, as well as your victory points. And depending on the specialty of your explorer, you'll have a different victory point schedule. Each player gets an explorer counter, and then 8 cache counters in their color, and a bunch of blank counters. There are also 8 discovery counters, down here, the white ones. 4 blank and 4 with the discovery printed on them. There's Native Kingdom, King Solomon's Mine, Lost City, Dr. Livingston. And then we have 50 white tribe counters that are numbered. I had to number these. My copy of the game didn't come with the numbered ones. And that's pretty much it. 4d10 come with the game, at least my copy. So that is it. And so we'll grab our dry erase markers and our pencil and start filling out the log and getting started on the game here. Before I do that, I have to determine, I think I am just going to play with one player, one explorer, one expedition. I have to determine, first of all, my explorer's specialty, and I think I'm going to do that randomly. Let me see if I can find a die. Well, I couldn't find an appropriate die, but I could use these 8 cache counters, randomly select one. Let's see, this is exciting. Let's see what we got. A 6. So then we're going to cross-reference the rulebook here, and our explorer is a journalist. He's a journalist slash explorer, so he's definitely being sent by a newspaper publisher. Pretty certain. I also have to determine whether my expedition will be a foot, mounted, or canoe expedition. That will be determined by rolling a d6. 1 to 2 will be a foot, 3, 4 mounted, 5, 6 canoe. And we got a 4 kind of on the ledge there, but I'm going to call that a 4. So that's mounted. So our explorer journalist is going to have to get some horses. There's a whole outfitting your expedition step, and at the start of the game you receive $1,000 in donations to outfit your expedition. They have some recommended setup options for your expedition, for depending on what type of expedition it is here. So I think I'm probably just gonna work with this. Okay, so I have the expedition makeup section all filled out, and we are just gonna go by what the rulebook suggests for people who are new to the game, which is along with your explorer, you have one guide, two bearers, four askaris. The askaris can hunt and fight. The bearers can carry, lead animals, or paddle if they're in a canoe. And there's a cost for each one of them. And bearers, as long as they're not mounted, they have a transport capability of 10. Then we purchased 11 horses, 8 of which would be mounted, 3 will be led. One bearer can lead up to 3 animals, and that came to $5.50. And with the remaining money, we spent it on non-perishable rations, 65 to be exact, at $2 a piece, 20 gifts at $2 a piece, and 1 musket at $10. So the total portage cost is 86, and our transport capability is 100. So there's that. And the horses themselves, the 3 that are not mounted are considered not ridden are considered pack mount animals, and they can carry up to a portage cost of 20. They have a transport capability of 20 per animal, and the animals that are being ridden have a remainder of 5 that they can carry. Each human is 15, has a portage cost of 15. So, with that said, we are now going to set up the board. It's very simple. You take the 8 discovery counters, 4 which are blank and 4 with something printed on them, turn them face down, shuffle them, and place them on the board. They have to be at least 5 hexes away from a published hex, and then at least 3 hexes away from each other. So we're going to shuffle that, do that, and then place our explorer on one of the ports. Our explorer starts out in Durban, South Africa, with his mounted expedition. And before I begin, I wanted to zoom in on this stuff here while I quickly explain a couple of things about water and gifts and stuff that you might be wondering about. Water is never purchased. It's available everywhere except in desert hexes without a river or oasis. Each man consumes 3 units of water per turn in the desert. Horse 8. Camels either 8 per turn or 16 every other turn. Food, each man consumes 1 ration of food each turn. Animals 4 if they're in the desert, or actually horses 4. Let's see. Otherwise, animals can graze off of the environment for their surroundings. You can shoot an animal at any time to provide 10 rations worth of fresh food. Horses, of course, cannot eat horses. Let's see what else. Gifts. Gifts have 2 functions. You can use them to help convince a chief and his tribe to become friendly to your expedition, or you can use them to barter with, to hire people, purchase food, items from friendly native tribes. And same goes for muskets. Muskets can be used to barter with. They also, of course, are used to fight and hunt. Each askari that is hired at a port, all 4 that we've hired in Durban, is assumed to possess a musket, and therefore doesn't have to be provided any. The 1 musket that we purchased would be equipped to our explorer himself. And the explorer can pretty much do anything that anyone else can do, a bearer and a askari, but he may not guide. Guides are basically only there to keep you from getting lost. Horses that are not being ridden or led will wander off, same as camels. There are two types of rations, fresh food and non-perishable. The fresh food rations must be eaten the same turn that they're collected or they will spoil. They represent the native plants and animals collected in the locality occupied by the expedition. Perishable rations are foods such as salt, meat, and biscuit, which never deteriorate and are the only type of rations purchased at ports or received from friendly natives. And that is pretty much the gist. I mean, there are little things here and there, like animals cannot travel in canoes and other things that are pretty obvious. So with that, we're going to go ahead and begin the game in the next video. Thanks for watching.